5 minutes early, right? How's everyone doing? Welcome. This to me, there's nothing like watching our guys compete on Sundays or Thursdays or Mondays. We play a lot of different days now, but nothing like watching our guys compete. But to me, this is really my favorite time of year as an organization because, I think it represents our organization coming together and working for a common goal as much as anything we do. When you look at, the guys I call our unsung heroes, our scouts, our R&D department, our salary cap people, our medical, our player engagement, our video people, everyone is involved. Our coaches, our personnel, everyone is involved. Everyone is heard. Everyone comes together. And I'm really proud of the process and proud. I do want to mention some of those scouts because they, like I said, they often go unnoticed behind the scenes, and we've got a tremendous college scouting staff. So we'll start with the guy who now is our director of player personnel, but Tarek Ahmad, for this draft class has really been the director of college scouting, and Tarek does a tremendous job. RJ Gillen has really contributed in a big way to this. Our assistant director of college scouting, Justin Chabot, has been with the Niners forever. Our national scouts, Chip Flanagan, Josh Williams, and Dom DeSico. Area scouts starting on the West Coast, Crowley Hanlon. Our Southwest scout, Hayden Fry. Midlands, Ryan Kessenich. Midwest, Warren Ball. Southeast, Steve Rubio. Our Northeast scout, Eric Thatcher. And our NFS scout, Mike Zakowski. Scouting assistants, they're too young to get a shout out, but they do a tremendous job. And Jesse Sayamalu, our scouting coordinator. We really have a great group. And our docs, I do want to mention them, Tim McAdams, Nino, Doc Nino. They work tirelessly on this. And, the reason being, when I used to work at Fox in broadcasting, the Holy Grail was John Madden. And everybody talks about, when you're in broadcasting, all the things you want to get into a broadcast, producing. And Madden used to say, well, what happens if a game breaks out? And that's the same thing as the draft. You've got to be nimble. You've got to be flexible so that you can react to whatever comes your way. And that's why you have to be prepared. And we're extremely prepared and ready and looking forward to the opportunity. To me, what the draft signifies, it's an opportunity to improve your organization, to infuse youth, to infuse competition, to infuse speed, to infuse toughness, dependability, all the things that we really covet. This is an opportunity to do that. So I can't wait. With that, I'll open up questions. And before, questions, I know a couple years ago there was a lot of talk about another receiver, Debo, and I said the same thing. But with BA, I've communicated on a couple occasions, on many occasions, our wish. And our wish is that he's here and a part of the Niners for the rest of his career. We're working through that. And, as such, I was a player once, and I never liked my business being out in the public, and so I'm going to respect that. I'm not going to speak for their side. I can say we're having good talks, and I'm just going to leave it at that, and we'll focus on the draft here today. But that's just want to understand you guys have a job to do and respect that, but that's kind of the tone I'm going to take there. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
When you guys communicated, did you use emojis or words?
There you go, the first question. We communicate well, and we love the guy, so thank you.
Has he been here for?
He is not. Yeah, he's not here right now, no.
But has he been here previously at all?
No. Yeah.
You received calls about him?
Sure. We receive calls about a lot of players, yeah.
Given permission to his side to go?
I'm not going to get in all those details. We're really focused on BA being part of us. He's under contract, and we're looking forward to that.
Debo and Nick both said the years with their contract things went into the summer or
Yeah.
even later that it impacted the way they played that season.
Yeah.
It negatively impacted the way they played that season.
Right.
Knowing that, does that give any just in terms of the timeline of trying to get something done with BA? Does that?
Yeah, I think that's important. I think there is, human nature is that deadlines force these things, but you know, I think you can always learn from situations, and you'd be a fool not to. I'd like to have our business tidied up at a little, you know, those things, they ran the course they needed to, and I'm proud of our record of getting the guys we want to get done. But I'm right there with everyone else. I'd sure like it to happen sooner. So
Both those guys said that, you know, it kind of affected them going into the season, you know, not having a normal routine and,
Yeah.
you know, that stuff lingering. Is that a concern for you guys if it does linger?
well, both those guys had fantastic seasons, but and they're fantastic players. But of course, you know, I just you know, alluded to it. You always want to learn, and you know, if we can get it done sooner, I'm always for that. We all are.
John, for the guys that are back in the building and you guys being back, you're not that far removed from the Super Bowl. Do you
Yeah.
feel a sense of excitement? Is there any lingering bad taste from how it all ended?
No, and that's important, Tracy. We always have great participation, and we have that right now. And the guys are out there working, and that's kind of symbolic of turning that page, and that's so important. You know, our organization was heartbroken, but like I think of our coaches. I failed to mention them in our scouting process. After a long, hard season, they had to turn around really quick, and our coaches are very involved in our scouting process. And so while they're taking some off time, they're watching players for this draft, and the players, you know, they went through the same thing. And so while for some teams it's been 3 months since they've been on the field, we've been on the field a lot sooner. But that comes with the territory, and it's a lot better than the alternative. So, but yeah, now you start forging. Every season's a new one. Every group's a new one. You got to forge your identity. We've got a bunch of new players that we've, you know, put onto our team with free agency, and now those guys are all coming together. And it's about the work now, and it's about becoming a team, this year's team. And you know, those guys are working really hard. And right now, it's just, you know, phase one is with our strength coaches, and they're doing a really nice job. But the guys are working, and we're happy for that.
Spot at 31 where sometimes teams try to trade back into the first round, maybe to get a quarterback. Have you had any sort of laying the groundwork type discussions with other teams about, hey, if this comes up, maybe we're interested in being at 31?
Yeah, my experience, Matt, is that that happens some at owners' meetings, but really this week is kind of the week those calls start to say, hey, just so you know, we have some interest in potentially coming up, and you kind of take note of that. And so I anticipate that some of that will come. You know, it's going to be an interesting year. I think it's an interesting draft class. I was just looking at my notes, and you know, like one interesting thing to me, dynamic and the way of the world right now, we put a grade on players in the fall if we think there's a chance they're going to be a more than 50% chance that they're going to be in this draft. So 83 players from this year's class that we put grades on. So thinking there's more than a 50% chance, thinking they're entering the draft, are back in college because of NIL and things like that. There's now a different route these kids can take, and some is, you know, 35 of those with starter grades. So that's a significant amount, and how that affects this draft, it's going to be interesting. I think the later rounds probably going to be lacking, you know. So it's a new dynamic, that one that I imagine we're going to be faced with each year. I mean, you can go back and make $1 million. I don't know if that's the going rate, but it is providing competition, and you know, that's a significant amount of players. 83 that we put grades on.
Total did you have grades on?
Oh gosh, 170 draftable grades. So 83 in addition to that, you know. So yeah, but you know, it's a different dynamic, and it's something the whole league's going to deal with.
What's your philosophy on trading down in the draft, particularly early?
Yeah. So I think, you know, we've shown, you know, in our time here, you know, the very first move we made in a draft was trading back a spot. And so we've traded back, we've traded up. And I just think you have to be flexible. I think, you know, having said what I just said, you know, sometimes trading back gets you later round picks. So I think or mid round picks. And I think maybe your thought process, if that pick you gain allows you to move back up someplace else, then maybe that's a good thought. But those are the things you got to prepare prepare for all these scenarios, and we'll see where that goes. I think 31 is an interesting spot, kind of where Matt was coming. I think at the end of day one, teams are eager to go get someone, so I would imagine there'll be some calls, and we'll be open and flexible. We've done it, both ways in a variety of ways and been successful doing some. And the big thing is just be prepared for every scenario. I think you have to be flexible. Human nature is to underestimate the uncertainty of a draft, and I think we try to account for that and the only way you do that is being prepared for everything. Go ahead, Nick. Yeah.
You guys always say you don't have 32 guys with first-round grades.
Yeah.
How many guys do you have with first-round grades this year? And does the fact that you're unlikely to have 31 of them is there a sweet spot, I guess, is what I'm asking?
Yeah. We're not at 32 this year. We're slightly more than the last couple of years. So that's a good thing. But, I think that just speaks more to we have a high standard that we don't change, blow with the wind to try to put first-round grades. But still, when we like players, we draft them. And I think we don't get beholden to, well, the league sees them here, so 22 is kind of where we're at, 22 first-round grades. We do have a high standard there. That is up from the last couple of years, and so I think that's a good thing.
There's a bunch of really good tackles in this draft. I don't know if you share that. Nobody sees these measurables.
Yeah.
There's guys there. Part of the question you probably won't want to answer is, given what you have, would you say in a draft that has a lot of good tackles, you're going to want to get one?
I think it's good tackles. It's good linemen. And I the interesting thing with those linemen in this draft, we think a lot of them have flexibility to be tackles and or guards. And so that's nice that you take somebody with some versatility, I think. So that's, I think there are some options, and part of the draft is not always for this, you're not always drafting for the immediate, sometimes it's drafting for future needs. And so we have to be cognizant of that. We got to be smart with that in terms of how we allocate our resources. We have 10 picks. You start asking yourself how many of those can make our team, and how do we want to approach that? And that's part of what makes this whole thing so fun and enjoyable, I do think a strength of this draft to me, a lot of premium positions are strong, and so that's exciting.
Every draft's different. What would you say is the deepest position in this year's draft? And also, you guys all have a few gold helmet designations. How many do you have this year without obviously naming?
Yeah, I believe when we this weekend we kind of went through those again. I believe we were about 16 gold helmets, and we like keeping that standard high. You always want to give more because our hit rate with those guys, but then you start, let's stick to our standards, because the reason our hit rate's high is because it is such a high standard. So we're at about 16 gold helmets, and we do well with those guys because it takes into account everything we believe in, and that's talent, that's spirit, and playing like a 49er, that's always a fun part of the process. Guys lobbying for a guy to be a gold helmet and saying, no, he's not making the standard, and we've got to hold true to that. So
You drafted Brandon Aiyuk in 2020. It was the pandemic draft. Can you compare that war room, those memories, to just a normal war room?
Oh gosh, that was so strange. Like it was for everybody, but first of all, thinking no way we're going to be able to pull this off as a league, doing this remotely. And what happens if I have terrible internet where I live? Here we are in the heart of Silicon Valley, and I drop phone calls left and right, And so I'm sure a lot of people have experienced that. How are we going to put on a draft? But the league pulled it off. We were able to pull it off. Our video guys, our tech, our IT people did a tremendous job. It was strange, but it was fun. It was something different. I remember trading for Trent Williams in my backyard and getting the word that it had come through because it wasn't looking good 2 days prior. So a lot of memories from that time. I prefer and enjoy it. I'm sure, like everybody, much more doing it up here in our draft room, a lot more comfortable, and I think much better situation. Those are strange times, though, and I give the league a lot of credit for forging on and pulling off something as monumental as that, the way they did. There was one up there.
Approach or changed or evolved since you started doing this a few years back?
How is our approach? Well, I think with continuity, the way we look at things, there's John Gruden used to talk all the time. You never stay the same. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. So we evaluate really hard, when it's fresh each year. And then over time, when you can see how things pan out, but we look at our process in every way. And so I think you're always trying to make improvements then. You're also looking at what's worked, and not just from a gut feeling, from data, and we're probably much more data driven. We have a tremendous R&D department led by Matt Plonsky, who does a great job, and here's what we think, but here's the reality. Here's what the numbers show as to what translates to success. So we take a hard look at that, and I think every year we try to attempt to tweak our process to make it even better. But the great thing that I think that I'm very proud of is the way we work together. Our coaches, our scouting, our R&D, our medical, we all are working together. Our player engagement, Austin Moss is very involved with getting to know the players because he deals with our players once they're here, and he's got a great experience. So I think with experience, knowing what you're looking for, I think we're really good there in terms of knowing what we like in players, and it may be different from what the league sees things, and we're okay with that. Because we've studied that. We've gone to great lengths to define who we want on this football team, and that's served us well.
John, obviously every draft is important. Does this feel any different? Purdy's last year on the rookie deal, big contracts, veteran players. Does this feel any more loaded to you because of that?
No, I think the only you're always thinking about that position, and to know we have an answer there and a really good one, that's comforting, and it allows us just to go and build around him and make our team stronger. And I think very highly of our roster, what we have. I think it's going to be hard for these, for young kids to come in and make a mark, but there's good players, and that's our job to find that, because you have to have that. As many of our players as we've paid, you have to rely on rookie contracts, and so we need to infuse all those things that I said earlier, and we need some players to come out of this draft because they're going to be playing next year and into the future, and that opportunity's there.
First round pick since 2021. When you made that trade, what do you reflect on? And I just remember the talk then was, you guys are pushing all your chips to the center, and if Trey Lance doesn't work out, you're going to be looking for a new job.
Yeah.
Can you kind of reflect on how that decision was made, and a few years removed from it now, how do you view it?
I think. First of all, I want to, we have an ownership that's very supportive, and they support us greatly. Jed, John, Denise, Jenna Mara, they believe in Kyle and I and our leadership, and they believe in our when we think something's going to make us better, they say go for it, and they don't give us a lot of restrictions there, and that's comforting to know we can go be bold and do things like that. And yeah, we gave up a lot. We did it for reasons that we had and motivations, and it didn't work out. But thank God for Mr. Irrelevant. he helped us, and and then I always am careful of this because Trey Lance's story hasn't been written yet. He's in Dallas right now, and I still think Trey's got good football in him. We'll see. That will play out. But I think also the freedom that when you've done something and you feel like maybe it can improve us to move on. We aren't beholden to, we drafted the guy, we just got to stick it out. We can do the things we want to do. And I think that's served us well, as and people can comment on the thought process that went into it. We certainly study it, say what went right, what went wrong, and we do that with all our picks. But I think we're in a real good place as a football team, as an organization, and we got to find a way to get a little bit better. And that's the focus of this whole offseason, and this draft is an awesome opportunity to do just that.
Do all the work you
did on your defense in
Yeah.
free agency, do you feel your biggest needs heading into the draft are on offense, or where do you feel your biggest needs are?
We've identified where we think, we want to add some people in this draft. But needs is an interesting. There's not a lot of needs on this team. But there's things like a couple years out. There's things a year out, and then there's opportunities where guys can come in. And so, I think, and while the glaring spot that a guy can come in and be the starter right away may not be there, there's a number of spots that we see, probably more than people might think, where there is opportunity, and we're very thoughtful of that. But then you also have to be flexible and nimble to see how the draft breaks, and then who do you have, not being beholden like we are drafting this position at 31. No, we'll draft. Okay, we got 3 or 4 needs that we see. Which way are we going to go with it? And that is when we've done our best work, and I think when most teams do.
Chris Forrester has said that, I think when he brought in Feliciano, that with the way they deploy the linemen here, that he wasn't even sure whether John could do it until he got here.
Yeah.
And if that's the case with a guy that you scouted that's in the league, how hard is it to project an offensive lineman for what you ask them to do?
That's a good question. And, John, I think it was just stylistically a little different, and not a lot of people play like we do. Now, I will say there's more of that throughout the league right now, because a lot of people, coaches that have left here, our offensive systems in a lot of places now. So we get out and run, and we ask our guys, we don't want any hesitation. We want you going and being the initiators. And that's not a lot of what you're seeing in college football. So you're absolutely right. There is a lot of projection when it comes to O-line play. And so you identify the traits that we want. You identify the spirit of the players that are the guys that we want. But offensive line, I think league-wide, not just with us, it's becoming tougher. I think the tempo with which teams play, it's not a lot about finishing the play they're on. It's about, let's get back to the line of scrimmage so we can look over and read this card they're holding up to see what play we're running next. It's not a lot of beautiful football being played there. That is tough. And John Feliciano, what we did know is that every place he went, he seemed to make that organization a little bit better. Offensive line is a group where it takes a special breed of human being, and John is that guy, and he connects people at that spot, and he's got a lot of versatility. He's been a real good player for us.
There was kind of a trend in football where the defensive line, the athleticism there was outpacing what was happening along the offensive line. But do you see kind of a reversion now with offensive linemen? You've mentioned you like a lot of offensive linemen now. Is there commensurate athleticism coming back?
I hope so, because it's a real issue. It did feel for a long time, man. The guys on the defensive side of the ball, and I think a lot of it was just the way we train our O-linemen now. Because I think developing offensive linemen helps with a lot of grassroots fundamentals, physicality, and in the youth, as we're probably getting smarter and taking a lot of contact, and a lot of the old school drills that build offensive line play and the running game and playing not the spread out game that you see so much, and everything being about how many plays you can run instead of how well you can run those plays. I think offensive line play did take its lumps. I do feel like there's a little bit of a comeback happening, and it's probably survival. We're paying these guys that much. We understand the quarterback. We can't. This isn't sustainable. And, I think you always follow the money, too, and offensive linemen are getting paid pretty well, and kids kind of gravitate towards the position where that happens. And maybe we're getting some basketball players starting to do that, and a bunch of different vehicles. But I hope that's the case, because it did feel for a while like we're not going to be able to do this. And
Outside of all of us, outside of all of us feeling very old with all the legacy guys coming out, what is your thought on guys like Jerry Rice's son and Ed McCaffrey's son coming out?
Well, I believe in bloodlines. I really do. I mean, I think there's evidence that you should. Now that can't. Then you got to step away from that, and you got to evaluate it, and that's sometimes difficult to do. And that's why a lot of different eyes, a lot of different perspectives, and that's what we try to do when when we have our R&D look at it, we have our coaches look at it, we have our scouting look at it. You know, we try to hit it from a variety of measuring points and inflection points as to how you grade these guys, because you don't want to do it just off that. That wouldn't be smart. But you know, these guys, you know, yeah, there's some inherent pressure on who their dad is, but there's also some good genes, and you know, and I think that matters. And so it's exciting that you have all these great, I mean, we're talking Hall of Fame players and great players and, you know, brothers of players. And it's really fun. T.O. was out here at the local pro day, and his son Tariq, you know, performed really well. And that was pretty cool. And I saw him running at me, and I played against T.O. a lot, and there was something in that stride that was very familiar. You know, it was something about the gait, and it's crazy how those things translate. You know, is that just gene pool? Is that modeling that they watch their dad run? You know, it's interesting to me, and but it's a fun element to this year's draft that I think it's going to be interesting to watch to see how it unfolds. Yeah.
I'm way over here, John. So I haven't
What's up, Eric?
I have not been able to hear everything.
Okay.
You said you welcomed Aiyuk contract questions, so I was going to ask you.
Wrong.
Is there any chance he is not on this roster Friday?
I wouldn't anticipate that, you know. Yeah. Larry?
You were a big hitter as a player, and I'm just kind of wondering, safety's evolved. When you're watching film, are you looking for the guy that detonates and blows people up like you were, or has the game now changed where you're looking for coverage guys all back there?
Yeah, I might be in jail if with today's rules. So like you have to change. But I always believe, you know, people say oftentimes like you couldn't play in today's. Well, that goes for a lot of players, and I think players that are good players, they adjust to the rules. That's how we played then. So is physicality still part of that? Absolutely. And you know, kind of in who we are as a team, we're a physical team. And so you stand out like a sore thumb when you're not physical and you don't play physical. And so I think there has to be, now there's a proper way and a proper technique that guys have gotten a lot better. Now you're seeing this hip drop. I don't know if that's physical. I think it's actually because they've taken so many different elements. If you can't hit them from the front, people are going to come up with different ways. They started selling and teaching rugby style technique. Well, a lot of that rugby style technique that the league was trumpeting has led to this technique called the hip drop. It's a real thing. It's happening. And so, you know, I understand it. There are some players that play extremely physically and are big players, and it's been a challenge for them in today's football. So you have to factor that in. But I think the best players find ways to play within the rules and still make their presence known on that field. And that's part of being a good player. Yeah. So thank you.